What is up, guys? John here, aka Bruce Lee, and today we're talking about how in the world did Conor McGregor lose to Dustin? What was Dustin's game plan? What were the things that we saw? And how can this be used as a blueprint for other fighters to beat Conor McGregor? So yeah, I did talk about my predictions like a few days ago, and I definitely was wrong. I actually gave the edge to Conor McGregor. I thought he was gonna win in the early rounds, but I did assume that like in the late 3 or 4 rounds, maybe Dustin would edge him out with that cardio and that conditioning and that length. But 2 rounds is all it took Dustin to take out Mystic Mac. So let's talk about it. Game plan. So what was Dustin's game plan? It looked like they wanted to trade not too much. It seemed initially like they're like, hey, let's have Dustin protect himself from that lightning left hand, and let's see if we can take him down, put him against the cage, clinch him up. And if you guys recall from my last video about the UFC 257 predictions, I said that would be a good game plan. I could see Dustin winning if he took out the power and wore on the cardio of Conor McGregor by using that clinch, especially that Greco-Roman or Muay Thai clinch. He ended up doing a takedown, some clinching, and fighting a single leg, stuff like that throughout the first round. But here's what happened, right? He did succeed in the takedown, and Conor did a really good job of pushing himself into the cage in round 1 right away. Is the right thing to do. Get your back against the cage and start to work your way up. Use that leverage, use the cage to your advantage. And he did start to tire out from some of that clinching. Like they traded some foot stomps. They traded some like shoulder popping, like the way that what Conor did against Cowboy Cerrone. A few of them looked pretty decent. I admit, I think Conor must practice those, because when Dustin did it, it didn't look quite as effective as what Conor was doing. So whatever. But Dustin started shooting a single or a double, and he did a lot of grappling. And what we found once they finally disengaged, I thought Dustin looked a little bit tired. And the commentators said the same thing shortly after I mentioned it to my friend. I was like, oh man, like I wonder if all those takedown attempts are tiring out Dustin more than Conor, because Dustin looked a little bit worn out. Conor looked a little bit more fresh. So I was like, okay, I'm worried. I'm worried. I think Dustin just set himself up to get knocked out. But here's what happened. Dustin took his time. He didn't panic. He followed the game plan, got his cardio back, and by round 2, I noticed after a minute into round 2, he was looking a lot fresher and the cardio returned, but Conor's did not. So that alone was huge. So everyone already knew taking down Conor is a good idea, but I think what people didn't realize is how much more effective, or how much equally effective the clinch is as well. You know what I mean? And that game plan absolutely makes sense. Now the other thing that we didn't predict, at least I didn't predict, was the calf kicks and the right hooks. Now the right hooks I did mention in my other video about the prediction. I was like, you know what? I had a lot of things backwards. I thought Dustin might win in the 3rd or 4th. He won in the first, the early round of the match, right? And the other things, I thought Conor McGregor's right hook, specifically a check right hook, would be really effective against Dustin's kind of like aggressive state. But what ended up happening is that Conor would move in with a jab cross, trying to land his lightning left hand, and that right hook from Dustin, that check right hook from Dustin was extremely effective. Now, for those of you who don't know, a check left hook, so in an orthodox versus orthodox fighter, that check left hook is a really good way to counter someone's right hand cross, okay? But the same logic applies when you're southpaw versus southpaw. When someone's trying to land a lightning, powerful left cross coming in at you, a check right hook is a good way to throw them off balance or catch them with some heavy hits. And what we noticed at the end of the first round, if you go back, Conor's left cheek, so where that right hook was landing, was getting visibly red. So that check right hook on the way in to keep Conor's aggression a little bit pushed back and to give him some damage on the way in was extremely effective. Now let's look at the calf kicks or the low kicks. Conor did not defend them nearly soon enough to be able to stay into the fight, right? Because Dustin attacked those calf kicks. I think he landed like 4 or 5 clean and hard, and that's more than enough to do to do some lasting damage, okay? And he also started landing above the knee a couple times, I believe, throughout the second round. So he switched it up, but mainly he's attacking that right lead leg of Conor McGregor. And what we saw was the power the mobility were getting severely decreased, which is exactly why you do leg kicks. So Dustin had a really good game plan with that. Conor didn't check the first like 4 or 5. He started to catch and push into Dustin, but it was too little, too late, everybody, because what we saw is that even when Conor like had the leg and pushed it up, I think he did it 3 times. The first time he pushed it up and nothing happened. The second time he pushed it up, land across, but no follow up after that. So Dustin would just take that cross and that's it. Okay, and then one time he had to land like a head kick, which absolutely makes sense. But the reason that wasn't effective, guys, is that when you catch a kick, the optimal time to counter is within like the first like 0.8 seconds. And I think Conor's flexibility and cardio, sorry, not flexibility, his mobility and cardio were already too drained by the time he started catching and defending those kicks properly. So at that point, he's still, and when you catch a kick, you're still taking some of the impact, right? He should have been checking those way earlier to try and hurt Dustin back for trying to kick him. And hopefully kind of deter him from more of those kicks. Conor landed a couple of good leg kicks himself once he saw that Dustin was landing his really good, but he should have done that sooner, right? Those catches, he should have done that like on the second one, not on the 8th one. And the checking, he should have done that from the very beginning. That's my opinion, okay? So a big loophole in Conor's plan. Maybe though, is he wasn't expecting it. Now, let's look at what Conor did good. I think his forward pressure was really good. Even though when the round was about to start, like round 1, her about to be like, back off. I haven't started the fight. He was ready to go. He pressed the action. He put Dustin on his back leg, which was a smart move. His speed was still really good, but that check right hook really took away the effectiveness of his cross coming in and his uppercut. If you guys rewatch the fight again, rewatch the highlights, Conor, he tried to land so many uppercuts and they wouldn't land because Dustin would just slip and counter, check right hook, and move to his right, which is a perfect thing to do in a southpaw versus southpaw boxing match, was essentially what a lot of that fight was. The other thing that I liked is that Conor's like when he was against the cage, he stayed calm, stayed collected. That was, in a sense, that's good, but at the same time, I think he should have done more to fight out of it and not stay there too long because, we saw his cardio drain, we saw his energy drain, taking right hooks, taking leg kicks. I think for Conor, he was surprised that Dustin was putting in so many different things, and that, like I think he thought it was going to be like a boxing match, and they would lights out, take him out very, very early. So all this other stuff, it's MMA. Anything can happen. There's so many different areas and moves that can happen in a fight. You gotta be ready for them all. Now, one thing that I said in my video at the very end was ring rust. Like, in the same amount of time that Conor's had like 3 fights, Dustin's had like 9 or something like that. I don't know the exact number right off the top of my head, but Dustin's been severely more active versus Conor. Conor fought like essentially like once a year. Maybe a bit more if you include the Floyd Mayweather fight. So that's not a lot of activity, and it absolutely does matter of how much time you're spending on the big stage and the real deal. Like I said it before, like hard trading, hard sparring obviously is a good way to simulate the fight, but nothing simulates the fight than just being in there and getting into the real fight. And he mentioned it in his post-fight interview, like, oh man, like the activity, he thinks the activity made a big difference, because even like the cowboy fight, like that wasn't much experience, that wasn't much activity. He took him out very early. Like that's not, it's a great highlight reel, but it's not like you're not getting that much experience. You're not getting that much of a learning experience from that fight to just blitz the guy in the first minute, right? It is what it is. That's why Mike Tyson, his coach, initially when he first got into pro, he actually told him, like, I know you can knock this guy out in the first round, but let's try to stay in for 2 or 3 rounds so you get some fight experience as well. And I think that's what Conor was missing a lot by fighting so infrequently. So I think he shot himself in the foot there. I mentioned it, he mentioned it, so I think there's some truth to be said there. So anyways, so the blueprint to beating Conor, I think, obviously takedowns, always good, but I think the clinch was vastly underrated in this fight. That check right hook thing, though, I don't know if that's something I would give as a blueprint to like other people. If, for example, if Conor fought like Mike Chandler next or Dan Hooker, that check right hook wouldn't really make that much sense, I think, because that's really like a southpaw versus southpaw interaction. It's not something you can replicate, okay? And I know Conor's taken other losses, right? Like, the thing is, I want to say like this is a new blueprint because Nate Diaz, like the way Nate Diaz beat Conor McGregor, I don't think you replicate. I don't think you can just become Nate Diaz and do what he did in that fight where he beat Conor. Basically, have an iron a granite chin and have endless cardio, right? If there's more Nate Diaz's, if you could do what Nate Diaz does, there'd be more Nate Diaz's in the world, right? And same with Khabib. Like, if that was the blueprint to beat Conor, why hasn't anyone else done it? Because in theory, it's simple, right? But there's only one Khabib. But this blueprint that Dustin has, I think, is replicable to other fighters, okay? So that blueprint, heavy clinch, some takedowns is always really good. Patient, and another good thing that I forgot to mention that Dustin did really well was a modified wing block to defend his face, okay? So because he knew that left hand would be the power side, he was getting ready for that right hook. So he's blocking with the wing block like this, which is palm to the ear almost, or behind the ear, depending how you like it, and then that bicep to elbow, defending the chin like this. Okay, he had this really good, and the benefits of this is a few. Against the hook, it pretty much nullifies the force entirely. Against the left cross, what Dustin was doing, if you guys watch closely, is that when the left hand came in, he would just go like this and start to like either parry the punch away or just have the punch land into his elbow. Really, really effective. And so the reason that people don't do this a little bit more is that it leaves your body so exposed to that liver shot, right? But what Dustin did was a smart game plan. Is like, you know what? If he attacks my body, let him. Okay, because Conor did throw like 3 crosses to the straight. When he couldn't find the home for that left hand, he went to the body, hoping that that Dustin would drop his hand and open up his face, and he never did. Okay, I think that's what Conor also didn't do a good job of, is trying to find openings. And I said this in my video, right? You know, we know he has that knockout left hand, but can he set it up? And I don't think he did. I really don't think he did. So Dustin, really good wing block into that parry cross. And then when he started attacking the body, he just let him. He trusted his conditioning and his toughness to take those body crosses and defend the face first. That kept him in the fight a lot longer. And, you know, as Conor was wasting energy and time with blocked shots or just body shots, you know, Dustin was preserving his energy. So if that, you know, people always say in boxing, like when you invest in the body early, it pays off in you know, in the later rounds. But when you're Conor and you're not known to last in the later rounds at all, I think it doesn't make sense to invest too much in the body or to be worried about taking those body shots too much. Okay, so now I went on a little tangent there. Let's go back to the blueprint. Heavy clinch. You know, wearing down Conor with takedowns is also good, but as we saw, takedowns, the user gets tired as well, where I think in the clinch, you're much more likely to wear him out without wearing yourself out as much. Okay, yes, he has good elbows, he got those shoulder pops, but don't get frustrated. Clinch him up, tire him out. Mobility and flexibility is a big part of Conor's game. Attack the leg, take that aspect out of it. You know, whether it's calf kicks or leg kicks, lead leg, back leg, doesn't matter. I think just attacking that leg was a really good idea. The lead leg would be better though, because what you notice in Conor's punch, especially with his left hand, is that he actually overcommitted. So like most people I train, and most boxing trained people I know, like when they throw a cross, they don't like to overreach and like kind of like get their shoulder past their hips. Conor was doing that, which is an overinvestment. It left him open for some counters, but that also means he was heavier on the front leg, the right leg. So attacking that right leg makes a lot of sense. So attacking that leg and using that clinch to your advantage, really, really good. And what you notice as well with Conor, that's a good part of your game plan, is that when you see him hurt or tired, go all in. Because we saw he's trying to do this, like he's trying to be Floyd Mayweather, right, with his shoulder roll, but he wasn't countering back, which means that like when you have him on the ropes, he's not known to fight his way out of it. He just kind of takes a break and blocks until he thinks you're tired or he thinks he can run away, right, or like move out of the way. Dustin, you know, he just poured on him, and the first flurry that Dustin had in him took him out immediately. Okay, so we know that when Conor, you know, when you have him on the back step, when you have him against the ropes, take full advantage of it. Nate Diaz arguably did the same thing too, right? You had an onslaught right before that rear naked choke. So really good stuff from Dustin, you guys. Conor, I think, came in underprepared, but Dustin had pretty much the perfect game plan going in. The only critique I'll give Dustin is that, and he said in his post-interview fight as well, is that he did leave himself open a lot of the times. It's just Conor didn't know to capitalize it, right? Like Dustin did have some openings at some point, and Conor didn't go for it because he wanted to land just his counter left, right? He just wanted to land his straight left punch. So it was a funny thing there that he mentioned it, but he's just like, I just don't give an F. You know what I mean? Like, which is, you know, it worked for him. So no shade. I really like that. It's just badass. I hope they have a third fight. I don't know if it'll be right away. I think Dustin should fight for the belt next, or whether that against that's Khabib, arguably against Chandler. We don't know. With Conor, he could fight Chandler or Hooker since Hooker lost, and that would be a really interesting fight as well. So I'm really excited to see what's happening in the lightweight division, guys. Let me know your thoughts, right? Like, was there some stuff I missed? Like, is there some more stuff we can do to beat Conor? Was there more stuff Conor could have done to not lose this fight? And are there any other fight discussions we should talk about? I only did the main event for this video, but I really like that first fight as well with that Muay Thai champion from Brazil. If you want to do some more of those discussions, and you know, let's hang out again, guys. Let me know what you want to talk about, and I'll see you next time. Bruce Lee is out. I'm a kickboxing teacher here in Canada, giving my 2 cents on UFC 257 in the books.